Шановні колеги, ми продовжуємо.
Dear colleagues, we continue our working day, and the topic of current event is as follows. Presentation of monitoring activities of the NGO Institute of Educational and Youth Policies implemented by the Ministry of Youth and Sports of Ukraine. We have Mr. Oleg Slabospytskyi, coordinator of Euromaidan public sector, Ms. Irina, Director of Youth Policy, Mr. Oleksandr Smirnov, activist of the NGO Institute of Educational and Youth Policies, and Ms. Olga Zhmurko, Roma Program Initiative Director from the International Renaissance Foundation. I invite speakers to the microphone. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will make an introduction. For the first time in 2016, we carried out the public monitoring of NGO and CSO projects, which won a competition in the Ministry of Youth and Sports contest for projects of NGOs. The results of our monitoring are presented in a report which could be found on our website. You can also grab the press release on reception and find it in line with the link, etc. Every year, a big amount of public money is allocated from the state budget for support of civil society organizations and NGOs working in the area of youth and sports. And both the ministry and civil society understands that just public measures of monitoring are insufficient. We also need public supervision over the spending of these funds. In order to understand the impact of this monitoring, you should keep in mind that it was started on the day when special it contributed to making decision for the allocations for this year. Thus, its outputs were immediately used for the incoming year. So the principles of our monitoring were as follows. It was independent and carried out by civic activists. We are grateful to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, which was the partner to our project, but neither of our participants, monitors, was a member of this ministry. Also, the monitoring was carried out by those civic activists who are not the members to those NGOs which were awarded by budget allocations. And the third principle was that major focus of our monitoring was made on the importance and coverage of each event held on the framework of the programs that we monitored. The monitoring was carried out within 5 months, from August through December 2016. We monitored 15, we provided 15 monitors and monitored 17 NGOs. Actually, we monitored 20 projects and we visited more than 59 events. we processed more than 1,095 questionnaires which were received from participants of those events which were visited. So the stages of the monitoring: first we analyzed the documents based on what the ministry allocation to the NGO was made. Then we analyzed internet materials about announcements about events, availability of open access and additional user-friendly materials. Then we attended the events and requested participants to fill in our questionnaires. Then we suggested that all the organizers of those events to fill in our questionnaire how their cooperation with the Ministry of Youth and Sports could be improved to be more efficient, and their perception about the efficiency of Ministry's works. And then we analyzed the data and the information which we collected. So briefly speaking, in result of 59 monitoring forms correspond to 59 events on the framework of that programs which were funded by the ministry, and from each form we got information about present organizers in the event, about declared and actual participation of invited people, also declared and actual role of the participants of the event, the deviations from budget estimates, presence of interesting speakers, and some other indicators reflecting the quality of the event. Here you see the graphs representing results of our monitoring. The majority of events were held in Ukrainian language, 30% were held in Ukrainian and Russian languages, and almost 10% were held in multiple languages, including foreign languages. The next graph shows how many participants took part in the events. Then actual number of participants, actually 80%, the stated number of participants coincided with the actual and or expected figures. When we come to the questionnaires, you can find the questionnaires and going to the links which you see here. Of course, the assessments were made anonymously, but generally we understood how people assessed that events. So we analyzed how people get information about the event, whether the event was interesting for them, whether it fit to their needs, how they will use the issues discussed in course of the event. Mm, uh, uh, then we asked questions about the language used in the event, etc. This chart shows different in different areas, in different topics. Blue color shows formation of the civic position and national and patriotic behavior. Red color is used for popularization and propaganda of healthy life and good habits. So how do people get information about the events? This chart sums up this information. The majority use the internet and personal communication, then mailing, then mailing from organizers, and from ads or also universities and schools. These were the strongest information flows through which people get information about events that might be useful for them. This chart analyzes the age split. The majority were between 19 and 25 years old. Then 32% were between 26 and 39 years of age. Whether it was easy to become a participant. Yes, it was easy. The absolute majority recognized this. And this is about employment of the event participants. 53% work, then 36% were students. Also, the majority mentioned that it was useful. The majority said that it was interesting. And the absolute majority indicated 4.3 out of 5 points as the usefulness of the events. 25 NGOs filled in the online questionnaires about improvement of their cooperation with the ministry. We asked how the activities were reflected in mass media and by the ministry. We asked questions whether they can find easily the ministry's documentation and website. We asked whether the electronic presentation of the ministry documents may simplify their work, and these are the final findings from that questionnaires. 44% recognized that the website was convenient, something around 40 that it was not. The majority of respondents stand for electronic allocation of the contest documentation. Then about whether they stack with deadlines about events, about deadlines for information about events. Some said they were not. Then people split into approximately equal groups, trying to decide whether this current system of involvement to the ministry funding is perfect or not. A couple of words about our recommendations to establish a separate side for transparent competition of NGO projects which seek funding from the Ministry of Youth. The NGO should indicate number of participants for each event and to submit information about future events well in advance to the ministry in order to make possible for stakeholders to attend. Thank you. Now I invite to the microphone Ms. Irina Belyaeva. I thank you. I would like to thank to all attendees and to our partners, specifically to IRF and to those who directly participated in the monitoring. Due to this monitoring, also members of our ministry had a chance to participate in monitoring. The ministry has rather successful track of such monitorings and events, but this time it was more supported by NGOs. The data which we got in line, the findings of the monitoring allows us to improve further and to apply the measures which improve our performance. Some of these documents provide us with useful data for our further creative work. For example, the statement and recommendation about electronic submission of documents will contribute much to the improvement of our work. As of now, the majority of applications are done on in hard copies, while we would like to implement more electronic document circulation. We also are grateful to all the monitoring participants for positive assessment, positive evaluation of our work. In the previous years, Public Council under the ministry monitored our work, but this was mainly monitoring of the informational work done by the ministry. This time, this monitoring became very useful for us. You have full access to all our resources and let us work together to develop a very efficient youth and sports policy and efficiently implement it. All the events, all the activities which we carry out, it is done on the account of taxpayers. That's why we are interested to involve broad public into our work and especially into allocation of funds. Thank you. I invite Oleksandr Smirnov to the mic. I would like to add about the idea of the project, how it appeared. Looking at the projects which were submitted to the ministry, they usually were reviewed at the level of chamber work, so to say, in the ministry. But we never carried out the on-site monitoring. While this time we decided to make an on-site check, and this gave birth to the project. The idea was not just to understand what was going on, but to predict about trends and of future changes in order to contribute to the transparency of the project, to make the project contest more open for NGOs, especially NGOs from the regions, which would involve those regional NGOs to the ministry's work, and to allow the NGOs understand better the objective of the ministry's funding and projects. For example, sometimes we find discrepancies between the intentions of the project and the real direction of the project. Actually, we found out that we cannot blame just the ministry for this, that the roots of that problem were in lack of systemic approach. What do we expect from the ministry? The possibility to submit applications for projects in electronic form, like this is done everywhere in Europe. This would prevent us from bulk columns of papers. This is just an obsolete habit, but submitting an application for the project competition, you have to supply 5 copies of all the package documents. Some of those documents are not needed, and they could be easily got by state bodies from the other state bodies. Although in line with the latest legislation, no governmental body should request from applicant any documents which could be provided from other state body. That is, they cannot request for any certificates from, for example, tax authority, because the certificate and all the information from tax authorities could be got by the ministry easily, directly from the financial inspection. Then we also raised the issue about the amounts of funding. Of course, the funding is not big, but even with that small money, we should, even that small amount of money, we should spend efficiently. In order to do this, we should make applications more convenient, more informative. I think this will be the major innovation. And I think that in future we will have this automatic and electronic submission system. I invite now Olga Zhmurko to the microphone. Good afternoon. On behalf of the International Renaissance Foundation, I would like to sum up for our organization, which is Ukrainian Charity Foundation, and which has the mission to develop democratic society in Ukraine by the means of a powerful civil society sector. For us, that project was very important for us because it contributes to support of reforms in Ukraine. Counteraction to corruption is important, and from this point of view, in the context of anti-corruption work, I encourage you to look at this project because the output of this project indicates that further transformation of this public policy in direction of positive development is very much dependent on civil society, and specifically from diminishing risks for civil society sector. And here we need synergy between governmental bodies and civil society organizations. Please pay attention that the government allocates more and more funds for civil society organizations to deliver some policies, some actions to implement and services to implement state policy in the area of youth sports. At the same time, I would like to mention important role played by the ministry in its attempt to make its activities more transparent. Some years ago, they invited representatives of international organizations to do monitoring of their projects, while now they try to monitor the quality of project implementation for those projects which were funded by the state. And one more aspect which is central for our foundation. We pay attention to the efficient models of best practices which we find, and we try to institutionalize them. That's why we appreciate very much initiative of our colleagues from civil society and the efforts of the ministry in their effort to find the ways and methods to implement to improve policy implementation. As the Charity Foundation, we believe it is very useful to continue dialogue between CSOs and the Ministry of Youth and Sports and maybe other ministries which are eager to improve their work. Dear colleagues, we